Welcome to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke. Today's guest is Oriah Mirza. She is a shaman, trauma life coach, and author of Alien Upgrades, which documents her experience of an alien encounter. Oriah, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, you also describe yourself as a Pleiadian extra-dimensional communicator. What does that mean?
Okay, first of all, I have to explain what a Pleiadian is. For people who don't know, a Pleiadian is a being that comes from a star system, and the star system is the Pleiades, which is considered also the Seven Sisters. It's in the constellation of Taurus, and it looks like the Big Dipper, and that's how you can recognize it. And if you're unfamiliar with star systems, basically every sun that you see, or huge star, there's a galaxy around it, or there's a planetary system. And in that planetary system, there's going to be beings and life forms that live there. So whether they are humanoid or creature or insectoid or just light beings, they are going to be humming or deriving, or their origins will be from that star system. Some of these beings live for hundreds of years and they don't have the timelines that we do. And some are just reincarnated and come in just like we do here for X amount of time, and then they transfer over to another species. So I relate to several species, but that is the one that resonates the most for me. The characteristics of a Pleiadian: they are highly sensitive empaths, highly telepathic, and how they translate here on this planet is usually they're the people that suffer the most, and they're emotionally battered. They're very the victim kind of mentality, but yet they're extremely magical, very warm, loving people, but they tend to be really used and abused. And we tend to get very angry and mad, and we start fighting the world back because we're so sensitive. And it's learning how to utilize our skills and how to be with the planet that helps us. Now, as far as the confirmation of being Pleiadian, it matched my numerology. The numbers that are associated with being Pleiadian matches my numbers, even my children's numbers, and my sign being Taurus, and born on May 8th. There's just a lot of coinciding factors. Then also my husband, who's a very well-known trans-channel psychic medium, I asked one of the guides that he was channeling one time what my origin star system is, and he said Pleiadian, which I already knew, and that was just confirmation. And I've helped a lot of people find their star systems, like where they feel they're most connected to. And there are so many, I only know like maybe less than 12 that most channelers have channeled, because there's so many. But so that's the Pleiadian part. And then the telepathy part is the part about the multi-dimensional communicator. That part is that we're highly sensitive beings, but just like any star system, most beings that derive from other planetary systems are telepathic. So most people on planet Earth don't realize how telepathic they are. There's a lot of telepathy going on already amongst everyone on the planet, but not everybody's aware of it or know they're doing it or know how to work with it or use it. So I boldly say, like Captain Kirk, I boldly go into the unknown. I boldly just say, yes, I'm telepathic and I communicate. And how I communicate, it's not mind reading. So I'm looking at you right now in this camera. I can maybe guess or have an idea about what you're thinking about right now.
That's scary.
Based on just the few minutes
Right.
that I've been here with you, I can get an idea, and I'll probably be right. But there's a lot of it is guessing, and a lot of it is just intuition. But the kind of telepathy I'm talking about is when I speak or feel something intentionally towards a human being, anyone. It could be anyone in the world, and even off planet. It could be another human who's crossed over. They live in a different dimension, like a relative or an ancestor, or it could be a guide, or it could be even aliens. I've gotten to the point where I can actually have not only my communication received and confirmed, but I can hear them in return. So I have actually found myself in the last several years getting feedback from people around the world through emails, texts, social media, where they will let me know that I've been in their dreams, or I'm talking to them in their head, or they don't know why, they're just doing basic chores and they hear my voice, or they heard a specific message. And it's always people that I have some intentionality around, that I want to help, or I feel something towards, like I want to support their soul on the planet. Even if I have never met them physically, maybe I just know of them, or I have met them on social media, or they came across my path somehow. If I feel called or connected to that person, I'll do what I can to help them with their path. So that's the multidimensional communication. And I can go into a lot of detail on that. There's so much more.
And we will get into that. A couple of questions since you brought up the Pleiadian element is that when we have discussions here on Closer to Venus, a lot of people tell me that it's perfectly reasonable to think that a lot of us are reincarnated not from Earth, but from other star systems. According to a medium that I've talked to, they don't like being called aliens, though they like being called star beings. I think that makes the believability of other life forms, how do you say, a little bit more palatable?
Okay, I can elaborate on what you just said. It's not that aliens don't like, they don't have a personal preference to what we do here on the planet. It's not that they don't like it. Is that our definitions and our connotations of the word alien means separate from. And higher intelligent life forms understand that we're all one. So we're in this together. It's a collective consciousness.
Oneness, of course. It's another thing I hear about a lot these days.
Yeah, so it's not a preference of what to call them. Now, the other thing is, and I call them aliens because it's just easy to understand. It's easier to say than extraterrestrials. And aliens are distinct, in my opinion, from spirit guides. And I'll share that in a little bit. But how they feel about labels and how they feel about being called things or needing to have a name or a classification or a species, even as far as saying you're Pleiadian, for instance, is not actually necessary because their evolutionary mindset of where they're at is not needing classification and labels to determine who they are. We need to organize and categorize through good versus evil, contrasting beliefs, vibrations, levels, species, etc. So that's for us. We need to do that. They don't need that at all.
So now that we've talked about the extraterrestrials and how it seems there's more people talking about them and government disclosure coming up where it's not just a figment of our imagination or something from a sci-fi movie. So did you believe in aliens before this or not necessarily?
I heard of them and knew of them more in the pop culture sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it was more like sci-fi movies, TV shows. It was not even really interesting to me because I'm a product of the early 80s. I was born in 73. I'm 47 now. I'm like an 80s girl. So I like Molly Ringwald and Madonna. I'm not looking into sci-fi stuff. I'm like a total girly girl. Like, I don't care about all that. That wasn't interesting to me. I didn't look outside of like what was happening in my world around me. So I saw other people interested in it, but I didn't know what the excitement was about them. They were ugly looking. They didn't do anything for me. So I didn't understand the fascination.
Right. Until you had your experience. So
yeah.
How did it happen, your encounter?
Well, this is a two-part answer. First of all, the actual surgery that took place, there was two incidences. There was one where they did like they invited themselves over and introduced themselves basically and let me know that this is going to happen. Then the second time they came over, they did the actual surgery. But in my research and evaluation of my life, because this is what it's forced me to do, I have also recalled time missing events. I have a lot of time missing, and including with witnesses where I've actually driven past the same freeway sign twice within 20 minutes, that kind of thing. Where it says like, welcome to Fresno, and you're still driving, and then 20 minutes later you see welcome to Fresno again. That's kind of time missing. And then also when I was a child, I had experiences where I felt beings were trying to come through my window at night. Sometimes you would think those are nightmares, but I was awake. I was totally awake, and I totally believed it. And I went over for a period of time, and I saw the silhouette. It looked like a Yeti. And now I'm in communication with Yetis now. That's a whole nother ballgame. But at the time, I was terrified. And my dad had his history, which was grew up in military school and was out of the family home from 8 years old to 16 years old. And he was obsessed with UFOs. And he's constantly was watching them. He was very socially awkward, and he looked like he had really heavy-duty PTSD. My whole life with him was always trying to manage his social anxiety issues. And he was highly intelligent. And his father worked at Lockheed International as a inventor, one of the top dogs there, back in those early days. I think it was like late 40s and 50s. So if I connect all these dots, I say that there's no accident that this happened to me. Also, I'm married to a trans channel who I got married to 10 years ago. I met him in 2010. And he is like a transformer beam that like attracts signals from the other side. He's a psychic medium. And if anybody wants to research him while you're listening to me, his name is Riz, R-I-Z, last name Mirza, M-I-R-Z-A. It's rizmirza.com. He's Indian, born and raised here in the Bronx, New York. He was a heavy metal guitarist in New York, and he had a band for 10 years, and his mom died and his brother died, and in that process, he was grieving and heartbroken and was devastated, and he became very open, and he started getting messages from the other side. He was not looking for it at all. So both of us are kind of like those reluctant, like a lightning bolt hit us over the head. Like we did not plan this. It wasn't in our life pattern. I have 5 children. At 23 years old, I had 3 children. So by the time I was 36, I had another 2. So I was busy. I was an entrepreneur, filmmaker, also helping people with business consulting. So we were very busy. So we're not looking for outside influence in that way. So we both didn't ask for these experiences, but now looking back, we realize that I'm sure our higher selves were very involved with this. The actual surgeries that I wrote the book about and that I came out and disclosed a couple weeks ago is my alien upgrade. So I had 2 incidences, one that took place in Paris, and then the surgery that took place in Marina Del Rey, California, where I was living with my husband. So do you want me to tell you the first one or just jump into the second one, or how would you like it?
Just give us a summary of what happened. What was it like? What did the aliens look like? The star beings, rather.
Right.
And what were the differences afterwards?
Okay. I'm going to give you the short version. If anybody wants to know the long, detailed version, you can go to my YouTube channel, United Star Seeds Connections.
And I will put that link in the notes as well.
So I'm going to give you the highlighted version. So the first time they met me, they came to a hotel in Paris where I was staying for a few days on a trip. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I saw 5 gray aliens by my bed. Now, that's not something I like to imagine or dream about. And then I closed my eyes. It was like I blacked out. And then the next thing I know, in the morning, I felt one of them was inhabiting me. And I couldn't really talk or move. And it took a while for my husband to get me to speak. And we finally got on the train to go to Versailles that day. And on the train, he started asking me a lot of questions. And there was an actual alien extraterrestrial being in my body that spoke through me in a different voice and answered questions to my husband for 20 minutes. Questions that were very highly advanced and technical. And my husband, being a professional trance channel, knew that this was legit. And I would never have known these things. I was very disturbed by the incident. I had no idea why that occurred. I wasn't happy about that. I was really glad it was over, and I didn't want to ever experience that again. And then we go back home. I'm back in Marina Del Rey, California, and that next day I am walking from the kitchen to the bedroom, and I hear a voice. It's the same voice that I heard on the train. And the voice said, at 7:30, go lay down on your bed, and there will be a surgery. And of course, I didn't want to believe that. And I don't have any history of mental illness. I've never been diagnosed with anything. Never have been on any pharmaceuticals. I don't have a history of schizophrenia myself or my family. I've never been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. I don't have any brain issues like aneurysms, strokes, anything that's ever happened to me. I wasn't under the influence of anything. I had not even attempted psilocybin yet. I'd never done DMT to this day. I didn't even know what breath work was or any kind of hallucinogenic kind of experiences. And I wasn't really in the business of like talking to myself, or didn't know too much about what that meant to have voices in your head. I didn't know what that meant. And all I knew is that I was new to the whole psychic phenomenon. I had been with my husband only for like 6 months before this happened. So I was just kind of learning as I go with him, just watching people come over and get readings. I mean, I wasn't really involved and didn't really understand the whole phenomenon very well. So when I told him that I heard this voice, that's an unusual thing for me to say. So I went to my room and laid down at 7:30, although I didn't want to, but I felt very compelled, almost like I didn't have a choice. And I go lay down on the right side of the bed in the cover of my book, Alien Upgrades, which you can get on Amazon. So I was laying there, laying on top of the covers, and I look up, and there's this giant alien. The head was just 10 feet from top of the head to the chin. It was 10 feet long and about 6 feet wide, or a little bit bigger. And it was the biggest face I've ever seen. And it was an alien face. It looked like a gray, so it had like the big almond eyes and the small nose and small mouth. Except the only difference is it had like 1,000 tiny little baby cracks, like all over the face from the top to the bottom. I could never have seen anything that looks like that. I think elephants have skin like that. The feeling I got, he was looking at me like if I was in a petri dish. There was like a feeling like this being was so advanced. But at the same time, I felt peace, like benevolent. I didn't feel danger in that sense. I felt like there was something about to happen. I had a feeling that this being knew a lot more than I would ever know. In that moment, I kind of knew this is real. My eyes were open, and then that alien face disappeared, and the next thing I saw, about 150 feet from me, in the room, which now became half bedroom and half big giant white space. That's multidimensional. It's called bilocation. So that means it's a psychic phenomenon. You're in between two worlds, which is absolutely possible and happens more often than actually being abducted physically into a ship. And the more I've researched it and the more I've talked to people and directors of MUFON and everybody in the alien, extraterrestrial, UFO communities, they say this is a very common occurrence, that they will appear in your room and it looks like they're in their ship, but they're in your room.
So it looks like they're in their ship, but they're actually physically in your bedroom or your living
Right.
room or wherever they appear.
It was kind of like there was no like tables or chairs, or there was no wall seam, like there was no corners. It was just this big space of whiteness. That's all I could say. And then I saw this alien like 150 feet from me standing there. It was super tall. It was like about 10 feet tall, super skinny neck, skinny arms, skinny legs, long fingers, this kind of like small head for its body. And in front of him was this man. And it was just an average looking man. He had dark hair. He was about 6 feet tall. He was wearing like casual leisure clothes. He looked like he might have been sleeping or something and maybe was pulled out of that situation to be there in front of me. He wasn't looking at me, the man. He was a human. He was looking at the alien. And the second I saw it, I didn't think that had anything to do with me. I was almost about to look away because I didn't understand. First of all, my conscious mind, it's kind of like I was in my dream state, although my eyes were open. I was in a weird state because that's not a visual that you normally would see. So my mind didn't know how to process that. So then the man was looking at the alien. The alien, I noticed, had a tray, a silver medical tray in his hands. And there was a bowl in the tray, and they were both looking inside of it. I wanted to see what was in the bowl. In that moment, I realized that's a bad idea. Whatever's in that bowl, I probably am going to have something to do with that. And I really didn't want anything to do with it because I became very aware that they were doing it in front of me. There's a reason. And so as soon as I thought that, everything happened super fast after that. It was like really, really, really fast, instant. All of a sudden, the alien was now really zoomed close to me. And I was looking at the alien and the man up close. And I looked in the bowl and there was this amber gel. And this gel had like little dots of glowing light. It looked like it was alive. In that jelly was an eyeball. And the eyeball wasn't floating. It wasn't like somebody popped an eye out. It looked actually like someone cut the whole orbital bone around from the cheekbone to the eyebrow to the nose, like a big circle. And the eye was literally moving around like it was totally alive and conscious. There was no blood. It was just a clean orbital cut. And of course, the first thing I did, I immediately went primal. I thought, oh, I'm going to die. I'm seeing this. Well, then that's it. So the guy then turns and looks at me. And as he looks at me, I see a black gaping hole in his eye, where his eye was. And immediately I got the telepathy, the download, that they were showing me that this gelatin was like a medical device. It was a biological material that's used in surgeries to keep the organs alive. And it connects at the molecular level and just like regenerates, and it doesn't harm or hurt anything. And they were trying to show me that, and they couldn't use any other organ of the body. It had to be the eye, so it shows that the eye was intact and still moving. So the whole thing was extremely disturbing, and I immediately thought that I got to get out of this situation. So as I tried to like find a way to remove myself physically, I noticed I was paralyzed. I couldn't move my body. I could only move my eyeballs. I couldn't move my face. I couldn't move my mouth. Just my eyeballs. And I started panicking like an animal that got like trapped in a bear trap or something. And the second I started doing that, my husband walks in the room and I saw him in the corner of my eye, and he looked very weird when he walked in. He was walking in almost like a zombie, kind of like very stiff. And he lays down very quiet. And immediately I was like, oh, he's going to rescue me. So in that moment, the first thing I see is there's a big vat. It's about 6 feet wide and about 10 feet deep. And inside of it was this gelatin, this amber fluid. It looked like it could take a whole body. You could put a whole body into it. And the second I saw that, I knew that was for me. And then that was the moment I knew this was my last breath on earth. I said, well, this is where I actually die. This is my last moment. How am I going to get through this? They better not put me in there. And that's exactly what they did. They took me by the head, and I felt my body going face first. And as it started to touch my nose and my mouth and my tongue and my eyes and my ears, I felt it. I felt it go in my nostrils. I felt it go inside my mouth. I absolutely lost it. I started convulsing, gagging. I was trying to scream. I couldn't scream. I was trying to tell my husband help. And all I heard my husband say in this very monotone voice, which could have been them talking through him, and it said, they are benevolent. They are here for your highest good. Everything will be okay. And he said it like 3 times. And then I was like, oh, great. So they got to him. So now I'm really doomed, and I'm going to fight for my life here. But it was too late because this stuff was going inside my nose and in my mouth, and I couldn't breathe. And I heard in my head to calm down, and I will be able to breathe with this fluid. It's a different form of breathing, but it's fine. And I wasn't tolerating any of it. I didn't want anything to do with what was happening. My conscious mind was on high alert. I was 911 panic mode. My eyes rolled to the back of my head. I started convulsing, flip-flopping all over the bed. So everything was still happening on my right-hand side. And on my left-hand side was the regular bedroom with the bed and the dresser and everything. All I know is that I'm convulsing. And in that moment, I black out. I don't know how long I was gone. And I wake up, it felt like instant. I opened my eyes and I saw that ancient alien. It looked like a medicine man kind of alien. And he was behind my head looking kind of over me. And I saw him. All I could do is move my eyes. And I was totally 100% paralyzed. And next to him was that other tall alien that I had originally seen. And then I felt something in the back of my neck.
What's the difference between the alien that you saw originally and you just mentioned an ancient alien?
Yeah, I didn't even know this existed. I've only seen it depicted one time at a Conscious Life Expo in LA. I saw an artist had done a depiction of an ancient alien gray. I have been searching high and low to see if anybody else has seen this alien. I think it's only been a couple times this has existed or someone has seen it. But it looks like a regular gray alien. Not the short ones, though, the tall ones, because the short ones came in Paris. It was like the messengers. But the actual aliens that did the surgery were very tall. They had that same look that most aliens have, which is the small chin, the big head, the big eyes. He had that same look, but there was these cracks on his face. I've never seen that before. Not even in any picture. There's been nothing ever anywhere that I've seen that look. And it was extremely intriguing. And the feeling I got was it was ancient. It was like a shaman, medicine man type alien. I'm looking up. I see this alien looking down at me. And then I immediately felt something at the back of the base of my neck. And it wasn't painful or anything. There was no like sensation, like there was nothing uncomfortable. I just felt like a wetness. It was just like a touch. Very light, almost not there. And this is the part gets really weird if it hasn't been weird enough yet. So as I was looking up.
It's pretty unusual.
Yeah. Oh, it gets more unusual right here. This is the part where you're going to have to kind of seatbelt yourself in because I might lose a couple people here. So as I looked up, I saw this blue tube. It was very long and it was like about 4 feet long, maybe 3-4 feet long. And it was hyper blue. It was like that kind of really like neon bright blue with like almost a white middle. It looked very biomechanical and it was thin and they put it back into my body. Now I didn't know what that was until years later. I felt like what they did was like a replacement of my spinal cord, but not my physical spinal cord. It was energetic. So in some other dimension, in some other form, there was that replacement. Now, how do I know that? Well, let me tell you what happened after that incident, that very moment. I blacked out. Everything actually went really white, and then it was just out. I didn't have any self, no memories, no dreams, nothing. And I woke up, it was like 12 hours later. I woke up at 3:45 p.m. in the afternoon the next day. I opened my eyes, and everything was dry. My eyes were dry, my nose was dry, my mouth was dry. I was like super dehydrated. I just couldn't even almost move my eyes. I looked around and I saw the room I was in, and the room was familiar. I knew it was my room, but I had no attachment to it. There was nothing personal about it. It was just like, yeah, this is where I reside. And when I got up, I knew I was supposed to connect with my husband or my boyfriend at the time. I knew I was supposed to find him. I knew he was the first person I was supposed to see. So I get up, and as I try to walk over to the room, I'm walking funny. It's like I had a weird gait. Like it wasn't my normal walk. So then that was weird. It was very light. I didn't feel my weight of my body. I felt very light. So I walked over to find him. It was a small apartment. And I went into the living room, and there he was sitting fully dressed for the day. I thought it was morning. And he was sitting on the couch looking at me with this really worried look on his face. And I looked at him and I realized it was late, much later in the day. And he said, I'm glad you're up. I'm glad you're up. We should go for a walk. Let's get out of here. It looked like he had been nervous. And he didn't talk to me about what happened. And he just wanted to leave the house. And I didn't know what to say. I didn't think anything was wrong. I didn't know anything happened. I remembered slightly what happened, but I didn't have a lot of recall. He walks me downstairs and he walked me to this ice cream store. And when I got to the ice cream store, they opened that long glass container where they have all those little, the ice creams, the circular ice cream tubs. And they opened it and he ordered his ice cream. And he looked at me and he goes, "What would you like?" I didn't know what he was talking about. I saw the circles. I saw different colors. I saw texture. I saw glass. I saw a woman with a weird, unusual expression and everyone looking at me. That's all I knew. I didn't know what ice cream was. I didn't know what I was supposed to do with it. I didn't know if that was something I eat. I didn't know anything about flavor. It was like I had no information. I had no trauma. There was no head injury, no history of anything. There's no reason why this is happening. No head pain. I didn't wake up with bloodshot eyes. No migraine, no fever. I wasn't sick. I didn't eat anything weird the night before.
You were not the same, though.
I was not the same. I wasn't even thinking the same, acting the same, but I didn't know because I wasn't actually the same. So I didn't have a reference that something was really unusual. What I started noticing was that the way people were talking to me and treating me was unusual. I felt something off about, I think they are not supposed to make that face. Because they were looking at me like something was weird about what I was doing. That's how I started to get a connection that there's a self and there was something going on with me. So by the time we got back to the house, he aborted the mission to get ice cream. He said, "Forget it. Let's just go back home. We can't have you out in public right now. I don't know what's going on." So he takes me back home, and I stayed home for 2 more weeks. I didn't leave the house. And I just stayed in my shower until the water would run cold. And I would just be on the floor. And in that time, I had to be in the shower because my nervous system was so raw and so heightened. And while I was in the shower, I started communicating. And there were so many aliens talking to me and guides. And it took me years to be able to organize my communication abilities.
This doesn't really sound like a positive experience, and I'm sure there's a resolution.
It wasn't positive or negative at the time. It was neutral because I didn't know anything was wrong. I didn't know anything bad happened yet. So all I knew is something was different in my interactions with people. That's all I could see. So I knew I had to go see my kids. They hadn't seen me in 2 weeks. I had to go pick them up, and they were young. So they were the youngest was 6, and the oldest was 13.
We've heard a lot about the aliens and Pleiadians and different types of multidimensional beings. At this point, did you have an idea why they were doing this, or did that answer come a lot?
That answer came way, 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 way later. Years and years later, closer to 8 to 9 years later is when I started to understand what happened. The first 3 years, just going to pick up my children, I was very nervous because I knew I had children. I knew their names, I knew what they looked like, but I didn't remember the connection I had regarding the little idiosyncrasies for the mother and child. I didn't have any of those downloaded or connected yet. So I was very scared. And when I went to go see them, my third-born daughter, who's very empathic and psychic herself, and she goes, "You're acting so weird. You're acting like an alien." And for the next 3 years, my children always made comments about what happened to me. Why am I so different? How come I talk different? Where's my mom? You're not the same person. Why are you so different? And that was where it was really difficult because I knew there was something that happened, but I didn't know what. And I couldn't find my old personality, so I didn't know anything was wrong, but I kept getting feedback that something was technically wrong. But everybody saw I was very happy, and I was starting to help a lot of people and sharing information that I was getting downloads. So I wasn't suffering. So people were happy for me technically, but the people who knew me prior, they all thought I was gone, literally gone. My personality is gone. So I lost all my friends and family during that time, relatives, friends, people who would normally just hang out with me. They disappeared out of my life. They stopped talking to me. And the reason they stopped talking to me is because it kind of sounded like a robot, not with a mechanical voice. Right now I sound normal. But I didn't sound like that back then. I sounded very to the point, very structured, very clear cut, very analyzed, everything.
Like an android would
And like an
sound.
android. My interests were completely different than from before, where I was a right brain, I guess it's right brain, like the artist, into fashion and art and acrylic painting. And now all of a sudden, I'm interested only in science, quantum physics, communication, telepathy.
All the metaphysical stuff,
Oh, yeah.
right?
And I had no interest in that before. So that's all I cared about to this day. That's all I care about. And people who have had contactee experiences, or they felt that they were cloned, or any kind of story like that, they all have a tendency to say the same thing. That they have this, it's not even an obsession, it's beyond an obsession. It's like a program. You're 100% in a different mindset. You completely change. Everything you've ever liked changes overnight.
Why do you think this did happen, and what do you think their ulterior motive is?
Well, there was no ulterior motive. There was only one motive. And it was very straightforward, that one day I will be here talking to people in the world like this. So it took 10 years for me to trust it, because I didn't understand why I was so different. Because I was born and raised in East LA, in Los Angeles, Southern California. I grew up all over. I had an attitude. I grew up in the inner city. I experienced a lot of violence. I was a minority myself, and I was constantly fighting. I was violent. I had no choice. I had been raped so many times by the time I was like 20, I forget it. So my personality was hardcore. So the person that I became overnight was 100% opposite of that. What I believe happened is that I had been already so broken open that I literally just am a clear channel. I'm a clear transmitter. The thing that was different about me with this upgrade is that I was very educated all of a sudden.
So do you think because of your background that maybe that has something to do with why you were chosen?
Yes, I think it has to do with my dad, my grandfather, also my upbringing. It has to do with the fact that at some point my higher self, or my soul life chose this. The end result as to why I'm here, why I'm talking to you right now, why this is all happening, is because I realized that what this is all about is the evolution of the planet. This is to help upgrade and evolve the human mind, the human consciousness. And you can't just do that in one big collective move. You can. There's moments where you have big collective upgrades. Like when COVID came in, there was a big collective upgrade. But typically you have to work with a human being one-on-one, and you have to go within their structure to understand how they think and how they process, so that you can help them to upgrade their own personal system. So it takes time. So for the last 10 years, that's what I did professionally with thousands of people. And people come to my home and they talk to me over the phone, and my husband and I, this is what we do. We have a private healing center. So what we do is we just help people reprogram. So they come out of depression, addiction, suicidal tendencies, people who can't get through the addiction centers here in Malibu especially. They come here, celebrity kids, people who are just struggling really bad mentally. We've helped people get out of all sorts of situations where they thought they were bipolar or they were on heavy pharmaceuticals, and through just our communication and downloads and logic and the way we speak, we help them to reorganize themselves and find peace in their being. By the time I had this surgery and by the time 10 years went by, I realized what was going on, that this was my global calling now.
This is a really, really interesting story. When you talk about the evolution of our species, I can't help but think about ascension. With the aliens, ETs, whatever you want to call them, how is that related to ascension, if at all?
Ascension is a moment in time. Ascension is a way of being. Evolution is an eternal conversation that happens over time. Evolution is moments of ascension over and over and over and over and over. You can ascend and transcend ways of being and vibrational communication with yourself and other people. What I mean by that is like low vibration versus high vibration. So when you're talking to somebody who's low vibrational, they're in that darker element where it feels very heavy, and there's probably more violence and self-masochism. And then as you raise your vibration, as you raise your beliefs about yourself and life and creation, you raise your own vibration. So then you become more high vibratory being. And as you continue to do that, you are now ascending. So this is the ascension process. And when some people go through the ascension process, it comes in like a big boom, like the thunder that you had right before we started. This like big cracking thunder. There's moments in people's life they'll just go along doing normal things. Either they have a catastrophic event, like someone dies in their family, or they get diagnosed with cancer, or something really bad happens to them, or it could be, or like a car accident, or it could be nothing like that. And they just have this moment in time where all of a sudden they wake up, quote unquote.
They wake
They
up.
wake up. And what that means is like all the lights go on. It's like all your circuit boards turn on. And when that happens, you wake up from the stupor you were in. It could be religion, it could be culture, it could be media, it could be propaganda, it could be fear programming, whatever it is that you were under some kind of spell, like a coma, like a sleepwalking spell. You're waking up past what they call the matrix, which is the series of conversations and programs that make up our life, our 3D world.
Now, we talked about a lot of things about your experience, and we've touched on some things about like ascension, raising our vibe. Do you think that the aliens could possibly help us raise our vibe?
Yeah, the majority of the conscious light beings that surround our planet and are helping us multidimensionally and in the 3D, the majority are here to help us to find out who we could be, who we are meant to be, our highest self, our most advanced self. They're helping us to evolve past the wheel and the fire and the industrial age and the technological age and going into the energy age. So yes, they're helping us move things along, and many of them are high vibratory beings that are supporting us. And the ones that are not and have different agendas, they all work in a different framework. They work in a different dimension. Those of us who don't work in that dimension are aware of them, but we don't subscribe to their behavior, acknowledge it, or need to, because it's not a part of our current conversation of what we're doing. We're here for another purpose.
Do you believe that there are certain aliens that are protecting us from other alien types that might not have our best interests at heart?
Yeah, Pleiadians are one of them. Lyrans, Syrians, Orions, and many others.
There's good guys and bad guys, in other words.
There is, as long as you're in the conversation of good guys and bad guys. See, the beauty of dimensions is this. Just like a book has many chapters, dimensions are a chapter. They're a different book. There are different chapters within a book. So basically, let's say you're reading 3 chapters. You have one chapter it's a fun chapter. Then you have another chapter that's kind of scary. And then you have a third chapter that it's like educational. Okay, so those are 3 separate chapters. That's how dimensions work. So whichever chapter you're in of your own evolution and understanding, you will be entertaining those conversations. So if you're in a dimension where there's contrasting stories, good versus evil, fear propaganda, violence, anger, hostility, people trying to get me, protect yourself, get in a bunker, all the stuff that comes with it. So my main mission on this planet is to help upgrade the planet, which means people who are suffering, if I show them that there's more to life than the conversation they're in so that they can upgrade, I feel like I've done my part. And if they upgrade, then what they can do is live a better life. And they can have a happier life for the generations to come as well. And that'll overall help the entire planet. It takes one person that shares the light and shares the information to another and to another and to another and to another. So I wanted to use my story and integrate it for the purpose why it was intended. I didn't know that's why this happened to me. I don't know why it happened. The only reason I found out that this is the reason why is because it's the thing that made the most logical sense. And there's no final answer. People have asked me all the time, if you know so much, if you have so many downloads, if you're so in communication with such higher beings, why don't you have any final answers? And my answer to that question is, why would I want to? That's the beauty of creative consciousness, is you're always creating and you're always awake and learning and finding out more and always creating more. So why would I want to put a cap on anything? Why would I put a limit to anything? I could tell you that we evolved past species to where we're just light beings and there is no species.
We hope that we keep evolving and energy goes on forever, as I've been told several times. Really, really cool stuff. Thanks for joining us. How do our listeners find out more about you online?
Yeah, they can just go to my website. It's UnitedStarSeedConnections.com.
Excellent. I will put the other links in the notes as well.
And I have a YouTube channel, and I have scheduled my first hypnotherapy session. I finally found somebody in Canada who was a colleague of somebody who was on Cosmic Disclosure on the Gaia channel. And I'm going to film it, and I'm going to put it up on YouTube.
Excellent. I'm sure we will be talking more in the future. You've been listening to Closer to Venus. This is Johnny Burke. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing. You can also leave us a review on iTunes as well. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.